The light is green. Hello, my name is Ramirez. Rami. Soko Rami. Uh, I was about to say a nickname that I do not like being called. Um, yeah, I've had a lot of nicknames. You can call me Rami. Um, or Ogie. Yeah, we can go with Ogie, like Ogie, as in like if you're saying Yogi but without the Y. You know what I mean? Like either way. That has nothing to do with what I want to talk about. Affirming realities, right? So right after I did my stream, went to Telegram, watched a bunch of this stuff. This is my Telegram group, and I reposted it on here. But watching this video reminded me of an old theory that I had, and it was an old theory. All right, so like you can call me a music snob. I'm a bit of a music snob. I love music, like to such a degree that I consider myself a bit of an audiophile. I don't know if anybody knows what an audiophile is. Basically, people who care about the quality of their music in terms of bit rate, in terms of audio equipment that you would use. I care enough to know that you can enjoy music or the experience far, far more than the average partitioner. This is what we call it. Shout out to Moo on 4chan, you know what I'm saying? I swear. But something that while hanging out on Moo, it's a 4chan place where people talk about music. I've learned not. I've learned that people will mold their personality around music sometimes. And it's not just music. It's like music, culture, clothing, a particular subset of behaving. They'll associate, and this usually happens to people that are in high school because that's when I was hanging out on Moo the most. So there's this weird thing that I noticed, not just with Moo people, but with normal people, where there's this surface level of understanding, right? There's like this surface level stuff that everybody should know about, right? If I say Rugrats, most of the people my age would know what that is. If I say Jimmy Neutron, or if I say Timmy Turner, or if I say or Goku, right? Like these are things that there's a subset populace that would understand what these things are, right? So something that I noticed with music was that there are surface level bands. These are the bands that everybody knows. These are the genres of music that everybody knows. These are essentially not need to know, but forced to know. Like you're forced to know these musics. You're forced to know these artists because if we look at how the movie theaters work, or at least how they, what am I trying to say? How music is selected as pieces, as a composition piece, in order to sell you an emotion, to sell you an affect in the music experience. But it also reflects on television. It also now reflects on YouTube as a whole. Like I bet a lot of people don't notice that some of their favorite YouTubers have like this slow, quiet track playing in the background. There is this really interesting effect that music has on people. And while I was coming home, I was listening to Basket Case by Green Day. Do you have the time to listen to me whine about anything and everything at all? Or all at once? Either way. And it reminds me that I was a big fan of punk music. But why was that? Was it because I grew up as an outsider? Was it because I grew up with an understanding of something of an experience that I was dealing with, and I was seeking solace in listening to punk music? And it kind of branches out from there because it also falls in line with cholo music, or at least the Mexican dynamic of things with gangsters or cholos specifically, because you tend to notice that like the only reason why some of these people will join these gangs is because they don't have any other way to affirm their reality that isn't a part of something that the media feeds into you. Like, you know how many times I've met Mexicans that will sound like a movie character, and then they'll tell me later down the line that, oh, this movie really influenced my way of being. If it wasn't for this movie, I wouldn't be in the situation that I'm in. If it wasn't for these X, Y, or Z experiences, I wouldn't be in the position that I was in. And I found it very interesting that people affirm their realities through these media. And then because it's a generalized thing that people understand, right? When I think about it, every time I've ever met a white person, they always give me the same voice. The same voice, the same affliction, and the same words come out of their mouth every single time. But why is that? Is that because they're ignorant or XYZ, whatever bigoted word I could use, right? Fuck those stupid words. Or is it because that's what they've internalized based on the reality that's around them, right? Based on the television that they watch, based on the music video that they watch, based on whatever media they were watching, they develop these ideas. So whenever they meet somebody of a Mexican descendancy, they're like, oh, what's up, ese, this and that. And like, it's always that same fucking voice. And I just never understood where it came from until I got older and I started understanding that there are aspects of our reality that affirm these ideas and affirm these behaviors within people, and it normalizes them. Now, that gets construed into LGBTQ, patriarchy speech and this and that and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, shut the fuck up. Like, I don't give a fuck, because some of the best art directors that have implemented rhetoric into whatever programming they're working on are females. Females, by and large, well, I don't know if now, because it was a statistic that I was looking at some time ago, so I don't know if it's still true or not. But by and large, the people that enforce all of these decisions in media, in music, or in any of these fields are women. And a lot of the times, it's not at the behest of themselves, but it's at the behest of their boss. So it's kind of like, yeah, there is an aspect of a patriarchy, but do you understand that women, by and large, are the ones enforcing these rules? They're enforcing the standards on culture, on how we behave. Complicated science. I'm not trying to blame any one person or any one group of people. I'm just broadening the subject because, right, I was just thinking about how music was affirming at that time and state of my own mind. I was gravitating towards a lot of music that was punk, post-pop punk, but all of the music that I was listening to had a very specific cadence to it. It spoke of a very specific, it spoke of specific instances or specific emotions or specific circumstances that I was dealing with. And because hip-hop wasn't affirming that reality of mine, I gravitated towards music that was affirming that side of my reality. There's this old meme that really fucked me up. I do not want to look for it, but it was it's a fucked up meme. But tell me that you have, what was it? It was like, tell me that you have an emotionally manipulative boyfriend without telling me you have an emotionally manipulative boyfriend. And the meme was like a bunch of different bands. Like one of them was car seat headrest. But if you were to listen to the lyrics of these bands, like it fucked me up on a whole new level because those were bands that I used to listen to in high school. And when I listen to them now, I'm like, oh, like it really gave me a different understanding of the music I was listening to at the time. And the music just describes a very selfish experience in the sense that it affirms that selfish experience and does not affirm that your decisions affect others, right? Like, it's like you're not a protagonist in a movie. Your actions have recourses. Your actions have effects on other people's lives. So, I don't know. Just listening to those albums now, I was just like, damn. Or at least it was... Whenever that meme came to me, I don't even remember, but this was like a few years ago now. But that meme really fucked me up because I started paying more attention to what kind of music I was listening to. And I started paying attention to what words were being used and what rhetoric is used, what cadence is it using, what emotion is it selling me. So, yeah, let me tie it back to how there is this normalization, right? I called it a blanket. There is a quilt, right? You know those sheets that you put over the bed, right? The ones that sit on the top. Well, each of those has a square. And each one of those is the surface level of all the genres, right? So if we think rock and roll, we think Metallica. If we think punk, I don't know if anybody would consider Linkin Park punk. It's very different, right? Because then when you look into how music is cataloged, it's very fucked up. Like R&B as a whole is just used as a label, the same way as soul music is. If you make music that doesn't fit into any of the bigger terms, you just get labeled either R&B, ethnic singer, or what was the other one I just said? I literally just said it. What was it? Soul music, right? If you don't fit any of these genres and you're an ethnic minority, you will fall into those categories. But if you're a white person or a white band or a band with a lighter complexion and you make music outside of the norm of anything else, you're labeled alternative. And it's a blanket ass statement. The industry itself is not going to recognize any of this because there's a variety of reasons for it. And a lot of it has to do with laws and pre-established notions that have nothing to do with our modern generation and have everything to do with the music mongols of back in the day. The Song Machine, it's a great book. I always recommend reading The Song Machine because it really describes what I'm talking about. In that book, I always like bringing up the Elvis Presley story. The guy who signed Elvis Presley wanted to sell black music to white people, but he knew that white people did not jive with black faces. So what he devised was, if I can find me a white boy to sell me some, like, right, music, be gold, right? I'd be rich. And i.e. Elvis Presley came out. But Elvis Presley, right, you get into this whole notion of environment and affirming realities. So when I think about it, Elvis Presley only knew how to play that sort of music because of the environment he grew up in. He grew up in a black neighborhood. He grew up around other black musicians. And by and large, he was largely influenced by his community, his surroundings. And because of that aspect of the affirmations of his reality to pursue that music is essentially how we got Elvis. If we look at Eminem, he also plays that same part. And these people were used to affirm the realities of even more people to gravitate towards these aspects of industry. Yeah, it's kind of fucked up. I'm essentially saying that you have no free will, and to some degree, it's kind of true. It's more of a suggestion. It's more of a slight nudge, and they expect it to work because of the way that our school system works. Right? Like, you basically get a bunch of kids the same age and you put them together. And, like, I don't know if anybody else ever felt like this, where you would look at other kids and you would assume that they have life figured out more than you have, even though you're both the same age. So it's kind of like we find ourselves in these self-defeating mechanisms where we'll more than likely lean towards certain behaviors because we want to be accepted in a social standing way. Like I said, it's normal for you to understand the basic surface level artistry, music, genres. You're not allowed to delve further into that depth because everything that's on the surface, think about how much, all right, it doesn't really work if I use an analogy with water. But if we look at that, that means the surface level of this quilt that describes all of these music genres or these music fields were dictated or decided on, by and large, through marketing, right? Because it all relates to your headspace, right? That's why I really like that Noam Chomsky video that I showed yesterday on the news, was because advertisers pay so much money just to find a 30-second advertisement that'll live inside of your head, right? So in that book, The Song Machine, it describes that the very first time that they discovered the power or the relevancy of a top 50 or a top 10 board was that it gets repeated. And the more a song gets repeated towards individuals, the more it sticks in their head and the more that it's relevant to them. So if you look at, I don't know if anyone remembers this, right? There was a group called, so right around the time that those Shuffle Brothers, the Party Anthem Brothers, those two dudes, the big froze, when they got really famous, people don't remember this, but they were rung around with all of these other celebrities. One of them was Katy Perry. And essentially what happens is when you have natural artistry today blow up in an organic way, the industry itself will cash out these new people rising up for old artistry to insert themselves, to introduce their name, their standing, and their legacy into the newer minds of people. And it's kind of why I always remember this group. It was called 303. They would do this thing with their hands where they would have 303 at the end. And this group was one of those groups where they came out of nowhere. They had like 2 songs that were hit wonders. And next thing you know, Katy Perry wants to do a remix. I can't remember who else wanted to do a remix, but this is a tried and true tactic that is used by the music industry to still keep relevancy amongst their top hitters, amongst their bigger artistry that they have. I don't know. I've lived long enough to look at the music industry to see this shit repeat over and over and over again. And I was a big Lil Wayne fan, right, when I was younger. And when he decided to make Young Money, Cash Money, I think it was either called Cash Money or Young Money. Either way, if you look at all of the people that were signed under Lil Wayne at that time, what became of them? What happened to every single one of them? Like now they're now even bigger stars than Lil Wayne. So in a weird way, they used Lil Wayne's standing, his fame, and his platform in order to propel the platforms of Drake, Nicki Minaj, and I can't remember who else was on Young Money. Right? There were a lot of people on Young Money, but point still stands that, you know what I mean? There's an industry behind them. That means that their music is going to be propelled in the minds of millions of people. Whatever message they say, to some degree, will subconsciously live in the back of their head. Or at least aspects of psychology will suggest so. And right, if I attach that, if I'm just trying to affirm my reality with whatever music that I'm listening to, why is anybody surprised that culture is the way it is now? Why is anybody surprised that you had entire demographics completely mold and change their culture? Because I always bring it up with the Koreans, right? How did the Koreans become the most influential people in fashion, especially in hip-hop fashion? Like, you have Asians that dress more hip-hop than Americans. What the fuck happened? Like, some of the biggest designers for hip-hop aren't even American. Like, what? Like, how did we even get here? How did we even get here to such a degree that now we have other countries who understand America's culture far better than Americans? And a lot of it has to do with the fact that they don't understand that they're being led, right? I remember a time when hip hop meant baggy jeans. Now hip hop means skinny jeans. It's like, how did these changes happen? Where did these things happen? Because if this industry had just that one visible notion, right, where they had baggy pants and now they don't have baggy pants, it occurred somewhere. Something must have happened in order for these changes to move forward, right? Monkey see, monkey do. And that's why it's important that, I don't know if anybody knows this other stat, but the people that get advertised the most to, number 1 is women, and number 2 it's children. And you don't even gotta look for data on that. Just watch commercials, which nobody does anymore, right? Because now commercials are more, and then it gets even worse when you think about how commercials now are targeted towards demographics. That means there's an aspect of your data that is floating out there, and they understand your age, where you're at in life, and all these other aspects of your life that will affect you. And it's crazy. It's not, I'm not trying to scare anybody not to listen to their favorite music, but it is important to be mindful of that, because I remember one time I spoke to this was like years ago. What server was I in? I think I was in the right server. It's a ethno right wing wingnet server that I used to hang out on. I became very notorious on there. But I met this one kid where I was trying to explain to him, where like, yeah, the rap music you're listening to is what will dictate certain aspects of your behavior. And he was like, nah, man, not like, but he, like, an aspect of him knew that I was right. And he didn't want to come to terms with that, like, because it felt like he felt that he would then have to give up that music because it promoted X, Y, or Z. And I'm like, you don't. You just have to be aware of it. And I look at it from a perspective of, why is only one particular aspect of hip hop and rap always promoted and the other isn't? And when you look into there is allegations and conspiracy theories that say aspects of foundations and aspects of this industry knew what would happen if they promoted gangster rap. They knew what would happen if they, right? Let's go into playing theater. They thought themselves that if they could keep hyping up this aspect of culture, that it would permeate all throughout America, from the West to the East Coast. And nobody remembers this, but there was something like that. And they created it from two New Yorkers. Keep that in mind, right? Because one of them was Tupac Shakur, which everybody associates Tupac Shakur with being in the West side of things, right? Either way. It created this dynamic of West versus East. And then when all that ended, there was this weird unification that happened amongst the minds of people. But that unification existed within the music of Notorious B.I.G. and Tupac Shakur. And, think of what songs are more popular from them. And think, what lifestyle does it promote? Right? If you think about that, what happened from that point on, I want to say like 96, 97 and on to early 2000s all the way up to 2006. That project of hip hop just kept going. And some people like to say that it was the Kanye West versus 50 Cent battle that happened between album sales that inevitably led hip hop and rap into the pretty boy aspect of things and away from the gritty gangsta affiliation of it. And that didn't make a return until the more segregated gangs started happening. And segregated as in smaller groups. They don't fuck with anybody else. There's no allegiances. There's more killing. Right? It basically, what happened was, the way I see it is, they promoted an aspect of a culture through and through, and they kept changing it through iterations over the years that only promoted one side of living life, thus allowing for prisons in order for prisons to get more people. And I don't even want to. There's some very interesting stats that you can pull up between the 90s to now, and how the rise of certain crimes relate to the rise of certain trends in music. I think a popular one that we can use now is Xanax, Percocets, all the pharmaceutical industry drugs, right? And I think of it as, you know what I mean? First, in America in the 80s and the 90s, they destroyed black culture because they knew that they couldn't have anybody with strong family ties, right? 'Cause I always say it like this because Mexicans in America don't have a culture. I don't know what people think. Like, you're retarded. No, everybody gets promoted black culture. Stop being retarded. Everybody gets promoted black culture. Everybody. From televisions to music to everything that we do revolves around black culture. It's just the bastardization that corporate America has created for us. And that's just what it is. That's why you don't see many Latin artists promote any of that flavor, because it's way too traditional. It's way too family oriented. They don't want that message or rhetoric in the public purview. I always find it incredibly interesting that people don't put two and two together, especially when you look at how they've built up this stage of, racism. It's only black and white. they never include the Latinos, and that's for a large reason. Why? Because everybody will conflate Guatemalans, El Salvadorians, and all these other Latinos, and they'll call them Mexican without being able to distinguish why some of these countries, their cultures are more socialist than ours. Because if you get a Mexican, or if you get a Cuban, or if you get a Puerto Rican, they're going to be hardcore red. And if you look at the demographics that enter the country, Mexicans, Puerto Ricans are dead last. And dead last, I mean, in terms of getting accepted, getting approved for visas and all this other stuff. And the people that get the fastest approval to this country are people that come from countries that are socialist in nature. So it's this weird dynamic that we're watching play out with how this reality keeps affirming itself. Yeah, affirming realities, hip hop, music, what else? So yeah, I always notice that there is this blanket level, surface level of, oh, if you're into rock and roll, you know these bands, or if you're into hip hop, you know these people, or if you're into indie music, that you would know these people. If you're into country and blues music, you would know. There's this surface level understanding of each subculture, right? So if I say rock music, people think Slayer, Metallica, Megadeth, and all this other bullshit, right? So it goes to show that to a large degree, people have been corralled into understanding themselves by understanding whatever music they listen to, because each music subconsciously is affirming a different state of reality for each of these people, which leads into other stuff. Affirming reality. Oh, right. I wanted to show the Alex Jones clip. Right? Because I was watching. Because I'm literally watching this judge tell Alex Jones, you're not allowed to say that. I don't care what you think is true. I only care what I think is true. And I'm like, huh? Like, how does that work? Let me see. Make sure it opens, though.
You may not.
You may not. Let me see. Video viewer. Bam.
Say, you may not say to this jury that you complied with discovery. That is not true. You may not say it again. You may not tell this jury that you are bankrupt. That is also not true. You're already under oath to tell the truth. You've already violated that oath twice today in just those two examples. It seems absurd to instruct you again that you must tell the truth while you testify. Yet here I am. You must tell the truth while you testify. This is not your show. Do you understand what I have said?
Yes, I believe what I said was true. So I don't.
Yes, you believe everything you say is true, but it isn't. Your beliefs do not make something true. That is what we're doing here. Just because you claim to think something is true does not make it true. It does not protect you. It is not allowed.
The moment I heard it's not allowed, it just really reminds me of all of the rhetoric that I read from looking at the Crusades, where it's just like, just the arguments that they would make, like, oh, you spoke about the Trinity in this way. Oh, you affirmed this aspect of Christianity this way. Now you must burn at the stake, right? You're not allowed to view this or any of this in any other way. You're only allowed to view it like this. It is not allowed for you to have a different version of your truth. So it's like, well, whose truth are we going with, right? And in relation to this, she was talking about how bringing up if he was bankrupt, and the other one was if he complied with discovery, right? It gets into this whole aspect of how he handed over his cell phone. Certain text messages were given to the opposition side. And Alex Jones was like, I've complied. Like, I gave you everything. Why are you trying to make it up that I didn't comply? Like, you even have my cell phone text messages, which is something that you're not even supposed to have, right? It's crazy to me that a judge, would tell somebody that I don't care what you think is true. It's not true. Like, what? Then what's the whole point of due process? What's the whole point of discovery? What's the whole point of then delegating this in front of a jury? Like, what? I don't know. That to me was crazy because, all right, so this also got into the Jehovah's Witness too, right? My mom's a Jehovah's Witness. And the amount of slander that these people get really interests me all the time, because it's like, all right, you get slandered all the time by everybody. You get shit on by everybody. Why is that? There's always a reason to these things, right? And I looked into the history of Jehovah's Witnesses, and the guy who created this organization was a Jesuit. So it's kind of like, well, you guys get shat on and you guys get all this bad negative flack, but the guy who created you was a Jesuit. Meanwhile, it just made me really ask the question of who is this guy and why does the mainstream media hate him? Because every other Jesuit or every other venture that was started by the Society of Jesus Christ has never been slandered, ever. You will never hear of any of the Holy Trinity churches be in any sort of scandal. If anything, it might be the subject of a false flag, which shouldn't say that because, Alex Jones and all this other bullshit. Crazy to me that she's like, I don't care what you think reality is. I don't care what you think your truth is. It isn't. I'm not going to affirm that. And the only reason that matters is because she's now affirming a narrative for the news, for the leftist, for the people that are on the opposite side of whatever rhetoric is being spoken. And I find that absolutely appalling, obviously, but just insane to me how, I don't know. I'm going into it. I also want to read this. OnlyFans bribed Meta to put thousands of porn stars on terror watch list. So OnlyFans and Meta, Facebook, labeled all of these girls as domestic terrorists because they are competition to their platforms. Like, what? Now, there was one more video that I wanted to show, but I don't think, now that I think about it, I don't even think I repeated it. Or, I don't think I forwarded it to my group. What does it matter? We'll leave it at that. I think I had a great discussion on affirmations, realities, how we search for music that has this, right? Because I'm listening to a bunch of romantic, lovey-dovey, sad. I listen to a lot of music, but I always have that in the back of my mind. That's why I'm always searching for new music, because I get bored. But either way, just paying attention to the music that I was looking at. Also watching that Alex Jones clip freaked me the F out because, I don't know, with the way I look at it now, it's like the whole leftist movement here in America is being propped up, or its existence is entirely fastened and maintained through the affirmation of lies, through the affirmation of nonsense, right? I wish I could give more examples, but then that would put me, you know what I mean? Affirming somebody to go through a transitioning period, that's an aspect of it, right? There's music, there's culture, there's movies, there's rhetoric in Disney shows. There is this culture movement that is pushing and kind of socially coercing people into making decisions that are completely detrimental to their health. And they're doing it through the guise of affirmation, right? Through those weird dopamine loops that people put themselves through. To me, that's crazy. But yeah, I think I did a great stream. 30 minutes. I wasn't expecting it to be this long. My name is Ramirez. Thank you for watching.